So we're going to start our workshops with our calendar workshop first. So Dr. Warren, I assume it'll be you talking us through this tonight.
Yes, thank you. I'm Sarah Warren. I'm the Senior Executive Director for Strategy for the district. We're starting out with a conversation around the proposed calendar for next year, and I will just share. There you go. Good. All right, we're just going to roll with this. Okay. So before I actually dive into the calendar itself, I wanted to just share a quick update on the last day of school for this year, because we're starting to get a lot of questions. People are getting antsy for the end of the year, which is understandable in March and now April. So the last day of the school for this year is currently projected to be for students on June 17th. So that takes into account 2 storm days that we need to make up. The teacher's last day would be the following day on June 18th. That assumes we have no more storms that we have to make up in the rest of April. So we will come back with more information if something changes, but right now that's what's anticipated, and that last student day would run on a Wednesday early release schedule. Okay, so on to looking at next year's calendar. So just to frame this is something that the board is required to do each year, both by state law and by our own policy ICA. And both the law and the policy not only dictate that the board needs to approve a calendar for the coming year, but also that the calendar needs to take into account the required number of days of instruction that the state puts out for all school districts. So for us, it's 175 instructional or student days that we need to make sure we're building into the calendar, and 180 days a year of what they call maintaining the school, or keeping the schools open, basically. So those other 5 days are days when teachers and other staff are with us, but not days when students have to be there. So the idea is that we talk about this and answer questions tonight. People have a little time to think about it, and then we come back for the second read and vote on April 8th. So I should have started by saying Eid Mubarak to everyone. And for all who are celebrating, it's kind of exciting to be presenting this particular calendar at this particular time. In addition to the halal meals, we're having a chance to talk about how we may recognize and celebrate our Muslim community members who are celebrating Eid, as well as our Jewish community members who would like to have some of their holidays recognized. So we have focused in here on 2 in particular. We're proposing to add Yom Kippur, which is a Day of Atonement in the Jewish faith, and then one of the 2 Eids, Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan. So we're proposing to recognize the first day of that Eid. There is a financial component to this. It would cost, we estimate, about $65,000 for each of those days to add the holidays. And the reason behind that is because we will have to pay a certain subset of employees to cover those holidays. So those are a school year base and ed tech employees. This is, I think, an exciting proposal for our community and aligns to our commitment to equity and a recognition of the rich diversity of our community. It's not completely unheard of by any means. This is something that's done in a number of other communities, including in Lewiston, but in many other districts around the country. And so we're excited to be able to present this as a possibility for Portland. So I just want to walk through a few of the other key features of this proposed calendar. In addition to the 2 holidays, one of the things that we worked hard to build in is a full 10 school day or 2 week winter break. The way that the year kind of plays out in 2025 and into early 26, it just makes a lot of sense to try to string those days together and give people that solid 2 weeks off. There are a number of other districts that are doing that as well. And so we are hoping to be able to make that happen for our staff as well. This calendar would have us starting on the 2nd of September. So that's our students would start on the 2nd of September. That's the day after Labor Day. And then our pre-K and K kiddos would start on September 3rd. Before students come back, we have built in 4 solid days of teacher time. So the Monday to Thursday before Labor Day, you'll see as we look at the actual calendar in a minute, that ends up being both a mix of professional development time and teachers getting to prepare to get back into school. The ed techs, based on their contract, would start a day later than the teachers. And then the other thing I would just note here is that this has our last student day falling on June 15th. That assumes no storms, which is pretty rare. And so the storm makeup days would fall on the 16th, 17th, and possibly 18th, depending on how many we have. And then our teacher last day is tied to the student last day. So it's the next working day after the student's last day. So I'm going to pull the presentation down and actually just pull up the calendar for a minute so that folks can see, oops, how this looks. Okay. So looking at August, again, you can see that we've got 4 days. This is a change from this year. So this year we had gone down to 3 days before the start of school when teachers would be in. And what we found was that that was not enough. And there were a number of people who said that it just wasn't a sufficient amount of time. So we've built that back up to 4 days, Monday to Thursday. 2 of those days would be school-based, sort of professional learning. One would be a district-based professional learning or district-led, and 1 day is the teacher's dedicated day, according to, in alignment with the contract. The ed techs, as I said, would start a day later, so that would be the Tuesday, the 26th of August. And then September, start the day after Labor Day, except for the pre-K and K kiddos who would come on Wednesday, the 3rd. In October, you'll see there that the addition of the Yom Kippur holiday on the 2nd of October, and then Indigenous Peoples Day on the 13th. This year, and I believe in a number of years past, there was a sort of Friday holiday before the Indigenous Peoples Day weekend. That is not there anymore in order to make room for the other holidays. And then you'll see in November, we have the Veterans Day holiday, the usual Thanksgiving break, leaving folks, teachers and schools closed on that Wednesday before the break as usual. And then you'll see there in December and into the beginning of January, that solid 2 weeks off for the winter break. In January, the usual Martin Luther King Day holiday, and New Year's Day is, thrown in there as well. February break is typical. That's the 1 week. And then when you get to March, this is where you see the Eid holiday, currently estimated to be on the 20th. So this will be something I think that will be good learning for us as a district, that it is ultimately decided at the time based on the moon. The religious leaders, the imams, will declare when Eid starts. So assuming that it starts on the 20th or the night of the 19th and into the 20th, we would recognize the Eid holiday on the 20th. The 19th would be a professional learning day for all staff. If by chance the Eid holiday actually fell on the 19th, we would, or 18th, night of the 18th into the 19th, we would celebrate it on the 19th, and we would put the professional learning day on the 20th. April, typical April break, except we took out the Friday before the April break, which has been, I guess, a tradition here at times, or certainly was something that happened this year. The Memorial Day holiday is as usual. And then if you go into June, you see that the tentative last student day is on the 15th of June, which is a Monday. If we were to have a storm day that we had to make up, we could end school on the 16th. If it's 2 days, we end on the 17th. 3 days, we end on the 18th. The 19th of June is the Juneteenth holiday, so everything is closed on that day, including schools and district. So if our students don't finish until the 18th, that means that our teachers would finish just after that holiday weekend on the 22nd. Hopefully we wouldn't have that many storm days and it wouldn't come to that, but that is a possibility. And then the other thing I would just note is that we're proposing here to close the district office during that week of the last week of June and into the first few days of July. There was a question that arose earlier when we posted these documents. I just want to be clear about professional development. It is contractually stated that there's a day for teachers at the beginning and the end of the school year when they have time to do their prep work or their closing out. So we changed the language in here just to reflect that a little bit more so that there was no confusion. So we called these teacher work days, which is what's written into the contract. But it is those days that you see shaded that way are sort of a mix of professional learning time, but with those 2 dedicated days at the beginning and end of the year for teachers to do what they need to do. I think I will leave it there and see what questions you may have.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Warren. I'd be looking to board members now for questions or comments. Board Member Lena, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions, Dr. Warren. The first one is just about the cost to add the holidays, and you said there are 2 groups, the EdTechs and the base. Is that because it would be a paid holiday and therefore they are paid on those days?
Right, okay. Because right now those are not recognized as paid holidays and they are school year employees who are hourly school year employees. So we would have to cover those days as holidays for them.
Okay. And then my second question is just about the school start date. Traditionally, and just in my personal experience, the pre-K and K students have started on the Thursday. What is the reason for that historically and why move it to the Wednesday now?
I'm not sure what the historic reason is, and it seemed appropriate to get kiddos into school as soon as we could, which is why we moved it to the second day. But it could be, that's something that needs to be addressed or discussed.
Yeah, I just wanted to advocate for the kindergarten teachers. I don't know if their opinion was taken in, and I don't know the reason behind it.
I mean, I think that having that extra day allows for some more prep time and perhaps some degree of screening. But a lot of screening also happens in advance. So I think, there's weighing more prep time with having kids get into school as soon as possible.
Thank you for that question. I also think in years past, part of it has been around transportation and giving time to get the routes set before putting the little ones on. But I also think transportation has had a major overhaul in the last year-ish, and so it may not be needed in those same ways. While I'm talking, I just had a couple of thoughts, which I really like this calendar. I think that we've heard from community that they wish that all of the holidays that are celebrated within the district could be in the calendar. I wish that too, but I think to be able to get those days in for our students in the classroom, this is a better version of the calendar. I think that we have, that it does feel like is more inclusive and will I spoke about this in committee meeting, that I think that there's still a disconnect between the ways that we schedule things in schools and the major holidays that our students are celebrating. And so I think that this kind of like operationalizes to think about Ramadan and to think about the high holidays of the Jewish religion in a different way, and that our previous calendar has done around major Christian holidays. So I'm excited to support this calendar, and I had two things that maybe would be great if we could add. I know we're not doing full amendments, but just to name them now, which are adding the early release time for all of our schools on the calendar, as well as the island schools. And then when I talked about this in committee as well, that we do have an internal calendar that we use that is around all the holidays and kind of their importance, like a narrative around them. But I would love for that to be linked externally as well, so that the community can see that, the PTOs can access that, that there's more sharing around the holidays that are important for our community out there and accessible. Any other questions or thoughts from the board? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So I think with that, we can close this workshop and move on to the equity policy. Okay.
All right. So this is just a very brief presentation on what are a few edits to policy ACA. So that's the policy related to equity. And I will just give highlights here, and then we'll open up the policy and look at it quickly. So this is a policy that was adopted in June of 2021 and has not been revised since then. The changes that you'll see are both grounding initially the policy in the strategic plan, which wasn't in existence then. It's a new strategic plan. And importantly, brings this policy into alignment with recent judicial rulings, including what's known as the Harvard case. And then it's quite a few just notes here and there that edit or clarify and simplify some of the language in the policy. So I'm just going to go straight into the policy. Oops. The red lines are actually pink, I think. Okay, so as noted before, you can see up front here, this is an effort to ground in our current strategic plan. You see some, relatively small edits as you go throughout. As you get into the definitions, there's a sort of tightening and simplifying of the equity definition, as well as you get down into equity lens and what was cultural humility, cultural awareness, just an attempt to clarify what we mean by those things. And then again, simplifying, so equity literacy, the definition is sort of shortened here. And then again, simplification of the language and clarification of the language as you go through. And this is all, in support of making sure that we can continue the work that we do. This is representative now of, we think, the work that we are doing and making sure that we can continue it and that it is aligned to current law and legal determinations. And I know, I think Chair Lentz had something maybe to add, so I'm going to go back up for a second to the definition.
Mm-hmm. One of the points that came up in committee was around the definition of equity and whether striking these different identities made sense. And both Vice Chair Bondo and Board Member Ali really said it made sense to name the things that we would be measuring in our data to see if those subgroups are evening out. And so between the committee meeting and today, we went just to check what the state is doing around this and to use those identity types and data categories, which I will be presenting an amendment for at the next meeting. And those data categories are race, ethnicity, sex, EL status, English language status, language, special education status, economically disadvantaged, and homeless status. That does seem to really encompass kind of the things that we are already trying to look at, but then also grounds us in state statute, which is great. Or rather, state practices. I'm not actually sure it's in a statute, but it is in practice. Yeah, Board Member Ali.
Yeah, and I think the piece that we were also stating is like this is just by stating subgroup, and looking at it in a policy perspective. If this was brought into a judge and something had happened, and the judge had to understand what subgroup is, the ones that are like going with the case could be like, well, this just says subgroup. We don't know what identifiable group that is. So by explaining or giving at least a list of subgroups and maybe putting et cetera, I don't know. I think it was just a requirement. It's more of it is a requirement to identify if we're going against a subgroup, right? We can't just say subgroups and then be like, what is a subgroup, right? So that's what my perspective of why we should have the list.
Yep. Thank you for that. And Vice Chair Bondo, I don't know if there's anything that you would add as well on that.
No, thank you. I totally agree with both of you. Yeah.
Great. Dr. Warren, was there anything on that last couple of sections?
Nothing that I think we needed to go deep into. There's, a lot of like a few words here and there that were sort of cleaned up.
Oh, and actually, if you could scroll back up, there is a section that we added. For some reason, it does not showing up in red. Keep going. The implementation strategies, that point A is really tying this into the state level statute language that just says American history, African American studies, Maine studies, and Wabanaki studies are the things that we implement into our strategies.
Yes, thank you for catching that. I think we should make sure that gets highlighted and we can reload this into board docs.
Great. Are there any questions or comments from the board at this point, or student representatives if they're still in the room?
Are we, for just color-wise, the purple strike-throughs are the same as the pink? We're getting rid of those?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. They were just, I think, different editors.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just me, Ali. I'm not questions, but so are we? Say if I made that amendment, for example, that we were just discussing, and I know I'm just asking about the some board questions, but like, what's the next step? Like,
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So around the subgroup language, I will email out an amendment, which is like the language that I would like to amend to the board before next week. And then when we get into the board meeting next week, I will ask if we kind of bring the motion to the floor, and then we'll ask for any amendments. And that's when we would make the changes right then. But if you want to make other changes, you would want to email those out to everybody in advance to give them the heads up. And then we would be able to have a conversation about that at the next board meeting.
okay. And yeah, also, okay. So don't make I just want to make an adjustment to my amendment as well. So the point of B, after A comes B, it says racial equity. So I think the definition of equity is like, okay, so racial equity is achieved when outcomes cannot be predicted or identified by whatever subgroup. I think that's also needs to be yeah, so I think the outcome piece also needs to be included in the equity terminology, because B as it is not incorporated in C. It says there's just no identifiable differences. Oh wait, never mind. Never mind.
So why don't you think about it a little bit more, and then we can also just talk and see if there's something we want to work on together. Or I can send you my suggested language, and you can make changes to it. We could put amendment together if you want.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Anybody else have questions or thoughts or comments? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close us out for tonight. We're already adjourned, but thank you all very much for a productive meeting and for so many folks being online not feeling well. So thank you all, and we will see you next week, if not before. All right, take good care, everybody.